Morning Exercises, December 6th. Hast not thou made a hedge about him? Job 1:10. This was the question of Satan. The design of it was crafty and cruel. It was to insinuate that Job's religion was all mercenary. Therefore no sooner had God extolled him, who can stand before envy, then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him? But though the motive he ascribes to Job is false, it is otherwise with the condition he represents him to be in. It was true that God had made a hedge about him, and he does the same for all believers. Three things may be inferred from it. First, God's people must be dear and valuable, otherwise he would not make a hedge about them. Men do not incur expense and take pains to fence in a wilderness, a common, or a dunghill, but only what they set a price upon. Since, says God, thou hast been precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. This love passeth knowledge. His vineyard, his garden, his jewels, his children, his bride, are not so dear and precious to their owner as all the subjects of divine grace are to God. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, in those that hope in his mercy. Secondly, they must be liable to danger and injury. Why else should he make a hedge about them? They are exposed to the same perils with others, but they have many which are peculiar to themselves, because of their new state and character and privileges. David admits this. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. They were all around him looking on, ready to seize his comfort and destroy his person. What is the language of every awakened soul? Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many there be that rise up against me. And as they are numerous, so they are malicious, wise, and powerful, and would soon overcome him. But his help cometh from the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. Thirdly, they must be safe whatever evil encompass them, for they do not lie opened and unguarded. God has made a hedge about them. What he does for the safety of his people must be effectual. Therefore the Church says, Save me, and I shall be saved, for thou art my praise. His power is almighty, and he saveth by his right hand them that put their trust in him from them that rise up against them. He keeps them as the apple of the eye. He that keepeth Israel never slumbers nor sleeps. Lest any hurt them, says he, I will keep them night and day. But how far does this hedge extend? It reaches to his estate, his business, his dwelling place, his family, his reputation, his body, his soul. Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? But here it may be asked, how does this subject harmonize with observation and experience? Do not his people sometimes suffer losses and injuries as well as others? We must distinguish between their spiritual and their temporal condition. With regard to the former, their security is absolute, They are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation. But as to the latter, their preservation is conditional. It is never absolutely promised, and the reason is because it is not essential to their welfare. Yea, sometimes the removal of a temporal good is a greater blessing than the continuance of it, and is even indispensable to some higher advantage. But with regard to every injury or loss in their temporal interests, there are two things which should always be remembered, and they ought to be sufficient to set their hearts at rest. The one is, that the loss or injury is entirely under the divine permission. Nothing can touch a hair of their head without leave from their heavenly Father. Satan could do nothing against Peter till he had desired to have him, that he might sift him as wheat. And so here, Satan walked around this hedge, and peeped through, and stood tiptoe to look over with envy and malice, but could not reach to touch his body, no, nor even one of his servants or sheep, till God, for the trial of Job, allowed him. The other is, that the permission is always invariably regulated by the wisdom and goodness of their God, who loves them infinitely better than they love themselves. He that spared not his own Son will withhold no good thing from them. He does not afflict willingly, but every trial he employs has a purpose to serve that will evince in due time even the kindness of the dispensation, and enable the sufferers to acknowledge with praise, "It is good for me that I have been afflicted." Let his people therefore hearken unto him, and dwell safely, and be in quiet from the fear of evil.